What's going on, everybody? This is Emerald Knight Leon back with another deck analysis. And today we're going to be looking at another casual deck. This is more for me, something I've always wanted to look into is UlforceVeedramon. Because we did get the Ulforce starter deck, we're going to get an Imperial Dramon coming next set. But ever since the pre-release, I've been wanting to make a deck around the new promo Arrow Veedramon Zero and Old Force Veedramon Zero to coincide with the V-Tamer tie and the Veedramon Zero that we got back during the special set 1.5. So this is going to be something I've been wanting to do for a while. So starting things off, we have our Digi-Eggs. We have 2 copies of Demi Vmon and 3 copies of Demi Vmon. These, based on how you want to play this deck, you can change the ratio of them a little bit, or you could add the other Demi Vmon that we'll talk about later on. To start with, we have the 2 copies of Demi Vmon, which are from Starter Deck 8. These have a inherited effect where during your turn, if you have 8 or more cards in hand, this Digimon gets plus 1000, which is going to be useful because we're not relying on jamming for everything. So being able to swing over security is going to be very useful. We also are running 3 copies of the Demi Vmon from BT-3. This is the one that has the jamming ability of when attacking once per turn. If this Digimon has jamming, trigger draw 1. We're going to use this in combination with the level 3 that we're going to talk about next, which is Vmon. This is jamming Vmon. He has been a staple in most Imperial and Old Force decks, mainly because of that jamming. He's a level 3 Digimon with jamming, so swinging into security, the only thing that's really going to take him out is an option card, really. But we're going to use that in combination with our Demi Vmon to essentially fuel our hand, really, which will let us go into our later editions a lot faster. We're running 4 copies of Vmon, which is from Starter Deck 8. This is the one that lets us warp into our UlforceVeedramon in our hand for a memory cost of 4, ignoring its Digivolution requirements. It also has the inherited. If you have 7 or fewer cards in hand, trigger draw 1. I would like to know the ruling on this particular Vmon because the Ulforce promo is known as UlforceVeedramon Zero, and I'm curious in if that is going to affect our ability to warp into it, or if we're not able to. Uh, it'll be interesting to figure out. We'll also be running 4 copies of EX1 Vmon. This one has the inherited. When this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your main phase, once per turn, gain 1 memory. So this is going to be useful mid-game. We're going to have him, Digimon over him. They're going to unsuspend during our phase, and we're going to get an extra memory off of it. That is if it isn't already killed. Finally, for our level 3 roundup, we are running 2 copies of Dracomon. Dracomon here is mainly here because of his ability to, when you hard play him, reveal 3 cards from the top of your deck and add 1 Digimon with Dramon in its name to your hand. So he's looking for our Veedramons, our Arrow Veedramons, and our Ulforce Veedramons. Moving on to our level 4s, we are running 4 copies of Veedramon. This is BT-2's Veedramon. Essentially, it gains jamming if we have a blue tamer in play, which is really all the tamers we're running are blue. So there's nothing to worry about that unless you don't have a blue tamer. We are also running 2 copies of Veedramon Zero. He has the when attacking, if you have a blue tamer, you can trash the top 3 cards of your deck to give him plus 2000 DP. And the inherited of when attacking, you may place 3 non-Digi Egg cards from your trash at the bottom of your deck in any order to activate draw 1. So we're using that with combination to our Arrow Veedramons here to basically just keep drawing until we get our Ulforces. It's also a good recycling measure since we're going to be trashed with our Veedramon Zeros and Arrow Veedramon Zeros and Ulforce Zeros. Their whole gimmick is you're trashing cards, and then their inherited will let you bring non-Digi Eggs back into your deck. Essentially just recycling to keep your deck going. To make up for the massive amounts of drawing we're going to be doing with this. We'll finally be running 4 copies of Starter Deck 8 Veedramon. This is It has no effect, but its inherited is when attacking. If you have 8 or more cards in hand, return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to its owner's hand, and then trash all the Digivolution cards under that Digimon. So what we're going to be doing with this particular Digimon is, if we're going against a hybrid deck, we're going to be taking care of those pesky level threes that are preventing us from gaining memory through anything outside of tamers, or reducing digivolution cost, or essentially just taking out Bokomons and bringing them back to their hand, which would have the side effect of them being able to keep playing it in order to search their deck. But the upside to that is they won't be able to get off their restoring DP memory from Bokomon's effect unless they have everything set up right away. Moving on to our level 5s, we are running 2 copies of UlforceVeedramon. This is starter deck 8 of UlforceVeedramon. It naturally has jamming, and its inherited is while you have 8 or more cards in your hand, this Digimon gets security attack +1. So this is going to be very useful for our old forces. It's why we're going to be trying to increase its DP when we're attacking, so it can swing over stuff for a lot of damage. And yeah, so we're also running 3 copies of UlforceVeedramon Zero. This is the one that came from the pre-release. It's when Digivolving, trash the top 3 cards of your deck. Then if you have a Tamer in play, this Digimon gets plus 3,000 DP for the turn. And its inherited is you may place 3 non-Digi-Egg cards from your trash at the bottom of your deck in any order to have this Digimon get plus 2,000 DP for the turn. So again, it's that whole recycling gimmick going on again. So if this is on our Ulforce Zero, that's going to bring him up to 15,000. If he's on top of our Demi Vmon over here from the starter deck, that's another 1,000 if we have 8 or more cards in hand. It's going to be very useful. Finally, we are running 2 copies of UlforceVeedramon from BT-7. This is the UlforceVeedramon that, when Digivolving, if you have a blue Tamer in play, unsuspend one of your blue Digimon. Personally, if you wanted to use this, you could use it in conjunction with Jamming Vmon here. So you'll swing with Jamming Vmon, you'll have a level 4 out, go into UlforceVeedramon, unsuspend Jamming V, and just keep going with the damage. Finally, onto our level 6s. We are running 2 copies of BT-7 UlforceVeedramon. This is the UlforceVeedramon that was a bit of an overpowered machine back during its meta. When one of your blue tamers becomes suspended, unsuspend this Digimon. This is not a once per turn thing, so for every time you're able to unsuspend a tamer, you're going to be able to unsuspend him immediately afterwards. And then also, once per turn during your turn, when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your main phase, gain 1 memory. So this is going to help us with some combos that we can work with. Moving on to our final level 6, UlforceVeedramon Zero. This was also the one given to us during the pre-release for BT-7. When Digivolving, you may place 3 non-Digi-Egg cards from your trash at the bottom of your deck in any order to unsuspend this Digimon and one of your tamers. And once per turn, when a card is returned from your trash to your deck, gain 1 memory. So this is going to be very useful. It's, again, giving us more memory to work with, unsuspending one of our tamers. So if we wanted, if we had both UlforceVeedramon and Veedramon Ulforce Zero out, and we had V-Tamer Tai, who's already been suspended, we could Digivolve on top of a suspended Digimon into UlforceVeedra Zero, use his effect to unsuspend himself and V-Tamer Tai, then use Tai's effect to suspend in order to unsuspend UlforceVeedramon if they had already attacked. Otherwise, you could say already unsuspend both UlforceVeedramon here and V-Tamer Tai, swing with UlforceVeedramon Zero, suspend UlforceVeedramon, swing with him, swing with UlforceVeedramon Zero, suspend Tai to use his effect for Zero, and then unsuspend UlforceVeedramon. There's a lot of ways you can work with that. Onto our option cards, we're running 4 copies of V-Wing Blade and 3 copies of Blue Memory Boost. V-Wing Blade is a card that I personally prefer for this deck, given the meta. It's a 6 cost to play, and its effect is returning one of your opponent's level 6 or lower Digimon to their hand, and then trash all the Digivolution cards of that Digimon. So, in the case of, say, uh, whether to use this or the option card that we're going to discuss later on, which has a benefit of unsuspending one of our Digimons, but instead of returning a level 6, we're only able to return a level 5 or lower. I prefer this one for the ability to trash everything below it and it be a level 6. So with a lot of the hybrids, we'll be able to trash. In the case of yellow hybrid, in the case of yellow hybrid, we'll be able to send back Dynasmon or Ancient Kazemon or Mastemon and basically trash everything, including their Zoes, their Jet Sylphies, their Kazes, their Zephyrs, and just make it harder for them to go back into it later on. The same thing applies for, say, Red Hybrid, where we're just taking out not only their Emperor Greymon, bringing it back to their hand, but also trashing everything, including their Takuya, so they can't go into it that easily next time. Moving on to our blue memory boost, this is mainly going to be here for its ability to search our deck for blue Digimon, and its delay effect of gaining 2 memory. Not much more needs to be said about it. On to our tamers. We're running 2 copies of V-Tamer Tai. He has the ability of, if you have a Digimon with Veedramon in its name, you may suspend this tamer to activate one of the following effects: trigger draw 1, or one of your Digimon gets plus 1000 DP for the turn. So this will be very useful using in conjunction with both of our UlforceVeedramons. He was the box topper that we would get from Special Booster 1.5, along with our Veedramon 0 over here. We'll also be running 1 copy of Sora and Joe. If you wanted, you could run 2, but you'll have to make room for it by taking around, messing with the ratios here. Basically, it's just here for its suspending as well. Every one of our tamers is capable of suspending to fuel our Veedramons. So in Sora and Joe's case, by suspending it, you're trashing up to 2 Digivolution cards from the bottom of one of your opponent's Digimon. On to our next is Rina Shinomiya. During your turn, when one of your blue Digimon attacks, you can suspend her to give that Digimon plus 1000. On play, reveal 3 cards from the top of your deck, add 1 Digimon with V in its name among them to your hand, and then place the remaining cards at the bottom of your deck in any order. So this is going to be very useful for searching for our Veedramons, as well as giving them extra DP so they can swing over our opponent's security. Finally, we are running 2 copies of Matt Ishida from BT-1. He is our memory tamer for this deck. The reason we're running him instead of Davis is mainly because he can suspend himself. So when you play a blue Digimon, you can suspend this tamer to trash the bottom Digivolution card of one of your opponent's Digimon. So back when I was talking about getting ourselves more memory, it's so that we could use Matt's ability. So by swinging in, gaining memory off of other stuff, we'll be able to hard play a Digimon such as our Dracos or our Vmons, and then use Matt's effect to suspend and then unsuspend our UlforceVeedramon over here. So that is it for this deck. Moving on to our potential cards that you might want to tech in. So starting off with our Digi Eggs, you could run Upamon if you're just for its draw ability. You could run Demi Vmon over here from BT2. This is the one where once per turn, when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during the main phase, it gets plus 1000 DP for the turn, just increasing that DP. Or you could run Kyaromon here if you're playing more than just 1 copy of Sora and Joe, and also banking off of Matt's effect, so you can draw from those. On our level 3s, you could be running the Vmon from BT2, where when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your main phase, trigger draw 1 off of its inherited. I personally don't feel like it's a good idea because your opponent might be able to swing over whatever's on top of it, so that might not be very useful. You could also run Siakomon or Madoki Betamon to make sure your opponent can't gain memory off a tamer, except for tamer effects or reduced Digivolution costs. On our level 4s, you could run the BT-1 Secret Rare Veedramon, which, when attacking once per turn, if you have a Tamer in play, unsuspend this Digimon, and it's inherited while you have a blue Tamer in play, it gets plus 1000. If you wanted, XVmon is a good card here because you could say swing with jamming Vmon, digivolve onto it into XVmon, and then unsuspend it so that you can swing again. It is costing you your jamming Vmon, but if you need the extra swing to maybe go for game off of something else, that could work. And speaking of going for game, Lobomon is here, as well as Kumamon and Korikakumon, just for that finishing move if you wanted. If you wanted to run blockers, there is Koelamon, or however you pronounce it, and Grizzlymon here. And then finally, Cordramon, which is from the starter deck 8, just in case you wanted that draw power, as well as an extra body coming out of security. On level 6s, you could run UlforceVeedramon from starter deck 8. It lets you return one of your opponent's level 4s or lower Digimon back to their hand, and then trashing the Digivolution cards. And when attacking, if you have 8 or more cards in your hand, you can unsuspend it. And if you want to go for game but not through Lobo, you could go with Omnimon Blitz just to swing for game. On our options, there is V Nova Blast, which will let one of your Digimon get jamming. So going back to XVmon, you could swing with jamming Vmon, digivolve into XVmon, unsuspend it. If you have enough memory, give it jamming with V Nova Blast, and then swing with jamming again. There's Ray of Victory, which is the one that lets you return a level 5 or lower Digimon to your opponent's hand. And then if you have a blue Tamer in play, unsuspend that Digimon. I still prefer being able to send a level 6 back to the hand instead. There's Howling Memory Booster for just trashing Digivolution cards. And stunning, if you're running Siak or Kyadomon. Ice Wall is always still an option if you only want to run one of it, which you can only run one. Hammer Spark for gaining that extra memory. Kaiser Nail is an interesting tech card if you wanted. You could run that onto your Ulforce and then take out your Arrow Veedramon and then digivolve into another Ulforce if you wanted. Just to keep up the aggression. As for Tamers, you could run Joe because he is able to suspend and you'll be able to gain a memory off of that. He's mainly relying on trashing your opponent's Digivolution cards to be able to suspend himself. Davis, if you are lacking in the ability to search your deck, he is also a memory fixer, but he won't be able to suspend himself. But if you are running say, Lobomon or another hybrid, he might be your ticket because while he can't unsuspend himself, that would let you just have at least one Tamer out that wouldn't be able to unsuspend. And the same can be said for Matt Ishida from the starter deck. As at the start of your turn, if your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution cards, you'll gain a memory. So that is it for this deck analysis. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I cannot wait till I can get some more tests with this because it definitely is a fun thing. Just with the meta the way it is, it's not very viable, sadly. So it's very much more of a casual kind of deck. So if you enjoyed this, leave a like, comment on what you think of it, subscribe. A reminder, I do have a PayPal donation page up on my Twitch channel, Emerald Knight Leon, as well as this YouTube channel. They are both in the channel's descriptions. And again, donating really helps me be able to go to more tournaments to get more test data on all the decks that I make these videos on. So I will hope to see you in the next video. Peace.